Hey guys, I'm JP. I'm gonna let my panelists come up if they can join me, and then we're gonna play a little tape, and then we'll get into the discussion. So. All right, let's roll the tape.
Mrs. Wang. Mrs. Wang.
Mrs. Wang, are you with us?
I am paying attention.
Now, you may only see a pile of receipts, but I see a story. I can see where this story is going. It does not look good.
What's happening?
Evelyn, I'm not your husband. I'm another version of him from another universe. I'm here because we need your help.
Very busy today. No time to help you.
Across the multiverse, I've seen thousands of Evelyns. You can access all of their memories, their emotions, even their skills. There's a great evil spreading throughout the many verses. And you may be your only chance of stopping it.
Don't make me fight you. I am really good.
I don't believe you.
Wow, that was really good.
He's waiting in the wings.
The
He
universe
speaks of senseless things.
is so much bigger
Script is you and
than you realize.
Of all the places I could be, I just want to be here with you.
Remember our mission. Consider the fate of every single world of our infinite multiverse.
There is no way I am the Evelyn you are looking for.
Every rejection, every disappointment has led you here. To this moment. Don't let anything distract you from it.
Testing? Okay. We'll be back and forth. All right. Well, as I said, I'm JP Castel. I'm our Chief Strategy Officer here at Evercast, and it is my unbelievably wonderful pleasure to introduce this team. We were very happy to support them during their incredible production, and I'm going to let them go down the line and introduce themselves, what part they played in the film, and also how they got attached. So, Aashish, why don't you start us off?
Hey, I'm Aashish DeMello. I was one of the assistant editors on the movie, yeah, I moved to LA in 2015, attended the American Film Institute for film editing, and I've just been working as an assistant editor and editor ever since.
My name is Zekun Zoe Mao. I was the other assistant editor on Everything Everywhere All at Once, and we were classmates, so I also went to AFI for editing, and yeah. I got the job through interview because Paul used to work at AFI Fest, and the email was sent to AFI editing discipline, and I went in for interview. And Aashish and I have worked before together, and Carey told me we probably need another assistant to help out with the VFX. So I was like, I know someone, so I just called him.
Hi, I'm Carey Smith. I'm the post producer on the film. It was a blind interview. There's a group of 5 of us, veteran post producers, that we're not working, or we are working, we share those. And David Kushner, to his regret, passed on this and gave it to me. And so I interviewed with the line producer, Allison Carter, and got the job.
And I'm Kylee Peña. I'm a product marketing manager for professional editorial at Adobe. I personally had absolutely nothing to do with this film because I joined Adobe in November, so I've been riding coattails. But the film was edited on Premiere Pro and used After Effects heavily, and a lot of my teammates supported this film through the process, which you'll hear about. So I want to give them a shout out. If anyone's here, Carl Soule, Marjorie Sachs, Todd Reeder, and the whole team just did a terrific job of supporting the film through some challenges and some really interesting innovations. My background started as an editor as well, and I took the path into technology leadership on the vendor side and the studio side, and then back around to where I came from with Adobe Premiere.
Awesome. So one of the reasons I wanted to choose this film specifically is because we all know it's an incredible creative masterpiece, and it's so revolutionary in that regard. But one of the little known secrets is that their workflow was also equally incredible. And we're going to talk about that, and this is going to be our chance to actually get into the nitty-gritty of how you actually made a movie. And I wanted to play the long-form trailer because it's such a good example of how do you even attempt to go through that type of footage. So my first question is kind of going down the line is, like, talk a little bit about what kind of cameras were used. Let's put this into historical context. This happened right after the pandemic, or right when it was starting, right? You finished shooting. And then talk about the cameras. How did you approach a little bit of the assistant editing? How did you organize that type of stuff?
I think we shot on Alexa, whichever. I don't, to be honest, don't really remember. But I do want to give a shout out to my DIT Matt, who is amazing. We had a meeting before our production. And Matt told us, like, okay, we're gonna shoot about 7 or 8 format. We're gonna have different resolution and different lenses, and here's how we're gonna approach the daily. So Matt would pretty much prep the proxies for me, which I will get twice a day, and then I will sync the sound and then prep them however Paul would need it within Premiere. But at the beginning, we prepared it pretty traditionally by scene and by, just the really traditional way. But then I feel like 2-3 weeks in, I was like, this is not gonna work. I couldn't remember all these things, so we switched a different direction. I was like, we gotta give these things specific names. So we started to organize the entire film by universes. So we would literally have universes and string outs based on the universe and how the film should have been, how it's gonna go. So eventually we abandoned the old way. So everything was just chunks.
How many universes were there?
To be honest with you, I don't.
Is it the hundreds or?
No. It's not that many, but there is one universe. I don't think everyone ever seen it, which is the Spaghetti Baby Noodle Boy universe.
We shot it, but it didn't end up in the cut.
We shot it with but I think we have like around 7 or 8 universes. But the universe sort of, I think the text universe got split into 2 eventually, so there was quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So Carey, I want to jump to you. Like, what was your initial approach when you got hired in? And we've got some workflow maps, but how did you approach tracking this entire post-production process? Like,
well, it was kind of easy because when I came on, Daniel Kwan and Daniel Shiner have this group, their little band of merry men that are talented, and they bring them along with all of their projects. And Matt Conrad, the DIT, was one of those gentlemen. So by the time I came on, everything was already planned out this way. And basically we didn't have a dailies house. Matt and Zoe were our daily house, and they took care of everything, and it gave us that intimate connection with everything, and anything that was wrong, we could fix it immediately. We didn't have to wait for the process. But I just took my lead from what was working with those gentlemen and just implemented it and just supported them as best I could.
Yeah, I think we actually have that workflow. So this is one of the moments that Jess was talking about, get your phones ready. But if you could put that on the side here. Oh, it's on this side. But quite complex. So, And so all of this was happening. Let's talk a little bit about where was everyone at. So you guys were based all in LA, or where was the editor at? Like, let's talk a little bit about locations of each person, each
Highland
party.
Park, Parallax is the post house that we were going to be in. Paul Rogers has a room there that he cuts out of, and so Zoe was going to house there. Aashish wasn't with us yet, but we had a coordinator, and then we had a large room where all of our visual effects artists were going to be working out of, because the majority of our visual effects were 2D. We didn't really have much 3D, and so we had 7 gentlemen and 2 directors that would do visual effects shots for us. So everything was good for us in this workflow because we didn't have to go to a facility. They could shuttle things back and forth. The cutting was handled very well. We just couldn't be in the same room with one another after COVID started. So, it was going to be a wonderful little band of houses of everybody doing everything, but unfortunately, we just made it work remotely.
Yeah, and I remember Paul Rogers telling me he cut the film on an old iMac in his living room.
Yeah.
How amazing is that? Can you imagine that 30 years ago?
And had a baby. Yeah. Second baby, yeah.
Awesome. And so let's talk a little bit about how you cut it, right? So maybe talk about why Premiere, what was that choice, kind of the day-to-day of what you guys were doing from getting those kind of projects together, and then how you would hand them off to the editor.
So we choose Premiere Pro because Paul and the Daniels primarily work in Premiere. When I came on board, I remembered Paul told me, he says, "Oh, you gotta go to Adobe to learn this new feature. We're gonna use a beta version of Premiere." I think we used the Premiere production feature a couple of months before it was actually gonna be released to the public. So I went to Adobe to learn this new feature, and then came back teach Paul and everybody else about how to do it. I eventually realized it's really good for. I think the production really benefits assistant editors in terms of editors from an editing point of view. It's the same because you're still work within the Premiere sort of world. So Paul didn't really have to worry too much about how to cut it. So it'll just be. I think the great thing, I'm really grateful for, Premiere production, this feature, because, Premiere in the olden days tend to get really heavy if you work with, we had a lot of footage, like tons and tons of footage. If we were using the traditional Premiere project, the project would get really, really fat. It'll take forever to open and everything. But because of the new feature, I was able to divide all of these all these footages into individual, like, small projects. Like, at one point, when we were in the VFX world, Aashish and I had, like, 2 of us had 3 productions. Like, we were able to multi-working at the same time in different production, not messing each other up. So whenever during the production time, once I get the dailies, I'll sync them up, and then I'll separate them into different projects. So I'll give Paul a project that just has all the string out the way he wanted to line up, and then he'll have his own project just to cut. So when pandemic hit, when we have the remote workflow, I basically, me and Ashish basically act as the middleman. So the Daniels pass the timelines to us, and we would organize it and pass it to Paul, because I don't think I had a time to teach the Daniels how to use production because they were on set. So I basically was like, okay, I can handle this, and you guys can give me whatever you want me to give it to Paul. So that's pretty much how we did the entire post.
And then how would Paul collaborate and work with the different directors?
In a dream world, 3 of them would be in the room. But I think towards the end, they did for that for a couple of weeks. But Paul would I think in the early stage, Paul would do the assembly, and then he would put it on Frame.io, and then the Daniels would leave notes, and they would do it. And then later on, we would switch to Evercast, so they would get on together, and then it's really just like in a room. With Evercast, it's really much just like a room. They all can talk at the same time, and Paul can make the changes and play back, and then they can see the changes immediately.
Ashish, I want to jump to you too, kind of talking about creative, and I know you're involved a lot in the visual effects, but everything that Zoe's talking about is assembly, but there was a transition where you guys started to actually cut and lay out sequences a little bit, right? Is that kind of correct as part of the process?
I think Paul intended that to happen, but we just ended up getting so swamped with work. Just there was new stuff happening every day.
We had like 3 new pickups and 3 pickup shots. So we were constantly we have things we need to take care of to make sure the entire machine is running. So we Paul had mentioned to us multiple times, but I don't think we had the bandwidth to work on it. Yeah.
Doing lots of different jobs, right? I want to jump back a little bit to Premiere, of course. Kylee, so one of the things Evercast does is we kind of work with creatives and sort of help build them a solution for they're looking for. And it sounds like you guys do the same thing through your beta program, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So Premiere Productions is basically a flexible, scalable framework for having a multi-project workflow. And that came directly from our teams working with long-form productions in Hollywood in particular, and hearing what they need, how they work, how they prefer to work, and then developing a feature that would answer that. So basically, this allows you to break all of your things down, your production down any way you want, and have it all within this framework called a production, so that there isn't duplicate media across projects. So you can break it down by scene or by location, by universe, whatever you need. And then it's easy to share those projects. If you just have one project, then it's hard to consolidate differences. But with this, you can lock a project and just work in that scene or whatever. And the reason that we wanted this film to use it is so that we would get real world, real editors, real assistants working on it to iterate it, so that we built it so that you all could use it in a way that would really change your workflow, save you time, save you frustration, and put more of the time on the screen and into the work. And we do that through the beta program. We have a public beta. It updates almost every day. And if you have Creative Cloud, you have access to every beta program you subscribe to. So you can go and download Premiere Pro right now and get access to things that are not released yet and give us feedback on those. And we will share a lot of that stuff on our beta forums. Just today, After Effects posted a new roto brush. So if you do any rotoing, go check it out and let us know what you think. But it's a really important feedback loop because things are not developed in a silo. When I was in a business class, they said there aren't any answers in the building. That means get up and go out and talk to people and see what they actually want instead of making assumptions. So that's really what we strive to do. And that's why we work closely with the teams like Everything Everywhere All at Once to make sure that these features are ready for prime time. And we did the same thing with text-based editing, having a really robust public beta program, and we're continuing to do that too.
I'm really glad you mentioned After Effects. Was there something you wanted to add, Carey?
I just wanted to shout out to Carl and Marjorie from Premiere because they really saved our keisters in a lot of situations because we layered a lot.
They've helped us as well. So I'm glad. I want to jump back to visual effects because I'm curious how you guys approached. Was it traditional like picture lock and then start going, or I mean, there's so much back and forth. So kind of talk about that process, how you input those and worked with them creatively.
We had like 5 guys plus the Daniels who were working on visual effects. That was our entire visual effects department, and they were on pretty early on in the process because they were coming up with designs for the bagel and stuff like that. Just sort of elements that you didn't really need the footage for, but they were working throughout with Editorial, and they were constantly coming up with drafts and stuff. So yeah, we were constantly in touch with visual effects, and yeah, always kind of on the same page.
Yeah, we started the VFX turnover fairly early. I think like we didn't even we actually started our visual effects before we even had our assembly, because a lot of the jumping pads, those little VFX, we needed to test it if that tells the story. So I think Aashish and I started I think Aashish jumped on in April, but I think we started our visual effects sometimes in June already. Yeah.
And you mentioned Frame. Did you guys mostly use that as a dam to review visual effects, or was it only for offline and review of cuts, or?
We used Frame.io. I think at the start it was for cuts, but for visual effects, yeah, we posted all our VFX reviews to Frame.io. And the Daniels would leave notes, with time codes and stuff like that. And Yeah, our VFX supervisor, Zach Stoltz, is obsessed with keeping everything organized, which is great for which is great for a show like ours. So he sort of plugged Frame.io into Slack, which we were using to communicate. And every time there was a new version, it would sort of automatically show up in Slack, and the Daniels would be able to see it, click on it, go to Frame.io, leave their notes, and yeah.
That's awesome. And Carey, I want to jump to you because, I'm a technical guy, so we know all the facts now. We've kind of heard how you gone through the process. But this isn't traditional, right? AEs are usually not acting in this way, right? There's huge teams. Like, talk a little bit about how you saw that change.
Well, I'm from my past history was studio movies. So this was my first indie kind of film where they give you the money and they say, go make your movie and then bring us back something wonderful. And I was like, oh, I've never done this before. So, I read the script and I read the script twice and I was thinking to myself, I got to read it again because I'm not understanding it. And then when I started watching dailies, I was even more confused. And then then they start cutting it together and I was just amazed at how all of these young individual talented people were working together so well because you can be in a studio film and have the most prestigious directors or producers with you and sometimes the communication's not there, but these guys really, between the two of these who worked so hard and are so talented, these AEs and an editor, you were, guys were both cutting stuff too. So I think that, I'm sorry, I totally got off on what the question was. When I came back to the independent of it all, and we turned it over, we were only $300,000 over what we budgeted. And that to me was a huge success because I've never had visual effects where it was just 7 guys doing the entire thing. So it was quite impressive to me, and it just made me feel like you don't really need the $200 million movie. This thing had a wonderful story that touched a lot of different people and the creativity of just a small band of merry men and women.
Can I add on to that?
Yeah, please.
There is my background, part of my background was in dailies and workflow, and I was the dailies lab, developing the workflow and making everyone happy. And there is just so much inertia when it comes to innovation in Hollywood on a lot of these shows. If it was always like, okay, we're going to get the dailies lab, they're going to produce, DNX 36, we're going to cut it, we're going to online it here. It's this very rigid workflow. Any deviation was not worth the cost. We don't want to pay the pioneer tax to try some new things out. But with this film, because of these different technologies and the embracing of it, everyone was able to work so differently. And I feel like you see it on the screen. I heard Paul Rogers, the editor, talk in an interview about swarm editing, about this really hyper creative, like, yeah, come on in, try it all out, and we'll see how it goes. And it's like kind of bringing design thinking into Hollywood in a way that's like incredibly disruptive way of thinking, because Hollywood is hierarchy. It's if it ain't broke, don't change it. Yeah, all these things. So, but he comes in, I think this was his second feature, and he's like, yeah, let's try things. And I think part of that is just the new generation of editors, and part of it is developing a culture of trust that I see that the Daniels have on their productions. So I think there's a lot to learn even beyond the technical workflow about trying things. I'm curious, do you all have anything to say about the swarm editing?
That was when our production was done. The Daniels started getting creative. I remember the first project I prepped for Kwan was the staircase fight. Kwan was like, this is gonna be where I'm gonna find the voice of our film. So I would have prepped, I think Aashish and I prepped a separate premiere production for him. Like, he has all the dailies and no other cuts. So it was a brand new production for him, so he can just try whatever he wants to. And then he would, once he finished something, he'll just Slack us, hey, Zoe, can you pass this to Paul? And then I would tell Paul, I have a new sequence from Kwan. Do you want me to cut it in for you, or do you want to take a look at it? Paul would just take a look at it, and then if whatever he likes, he'll just put it in the sequence that he was cutting. So like there was a lot of, Kwan was cutting, Shiner was cutting. There was a lot of ideas. Yeah.
And you're talking about a lot of different sequences and footage moving around. So how did you guys sync or move footage between these different now isolated people?
Um, so
everyone had the production with the dailies and stuff. So it was easy to
Easier.
with productions we were able to just plug in and out stuff.
yeah. Yeah, the actual footage, like we were lucky we finished our principal and then, shut down. So I had enough time to create like 5 hard drives for us and for the Daniels and for Paul. And then we used residual sync. I mean, shout out to Zach, the VF supervisor. We were gonna only use that for VFX, but then we realized, okay, we gotta figure out a way to sync these sound effects and graphics. So we basically Editorial adopted too. So we all are using residual sync to sync up our hard drive. So I would make sure everybody's drive is the same name, and I would post picture. Hey guys, let's put it here. So you open your Premiere, you don't have to relink everything because drive has the same name. And then when we did the 3 pickup shoots, Aashish and I were just driving out and gave hard drives to the Daniels because the footage there were so many footage. I was like, this is gonna sync forever. I don't want to slow down the VFX because VFX was syncing at that time.
Yeah, and Resilio Sync, I think at the time they would prioritize like the larger files, and
Yeah.
that would sometimes hold up the smaller things from getting across.
Yeah.
So it was just easier for us to drive over with hard
Yeah.
drives and just,
So I would just drive to Paul's house and leave a hard drive, and the Daniel's house leave a hard drive. So everybody has the same thing. I'll post a picture on the Slack. I'll be like, this is where the organization is. But yeah, it was really smooth.
This woman right here was just the mainframe. She was the CPU. She had everything worked out.
Kylee, it looks like you want to get in on this.
Yes. It's funny. Well, not me. I wasn't there. But Adobe, developed productions because there was so much user feedback of we want to share these projects together in a shared storage agnostic way. We want to be able to all be in the office together working in the same Premiere stuff. So Premiere Productions originally was developed for that purpose, and it hit beta in January 2020. And then we were like, oh, okay, well, time to iterate. And now there are a lot of solutions. Productions works great on something like LucidLink. You can put it in the cloud. It's just project files basically, and they go and sync to the cloud. So a lot of people do that. So while this production was on mirrored hard drives, so much has evolved so fast over the last few years, and I'm really grateful for that because it's fascinating how we've been able to enable people to work in the way that is really best for their life.
So, as if there already isn't so much praise for the team, and any producers in the house, this is the team you want to hire. It's like up and coming talent, unbelievable. But so Zoe, I kind of want to jump in now that we've gotten to deep post, right? Subtitles, QC, something that you're intimately involved in this process. Why was that?
Subtitles, yes. So we create all our subtitles in Photoshop.
Well, not to mention we had Mandarin and Cantonese.
Yes. Luckily I speak.
Lucky yes.
I mean, I don't speak Cantonese, but I went to Hong Kong for college, so I can understand it. So I would put subtitles for Paul so that he can cut, and then later on all the graphics and the subtitles. Except that I'm thinking that's a VFX shot for Aashish. Aashish handled that one. The rest of it were done by me and the Daniels. They were the one design everything. Our main title at the very end, Everything Everywhere, was done by Kwan. So yeah, we did everything ourselves. Yeah, I jump on the project first, so I have to think about and then pandemic hit, so there's so many things I need to adjust. But I have to say, like, without Aashish, I won't be able to deal with it either because he heavy lifted a lot of other stuff later, like VFX and stuff, coloring stuff. So yeah, I wouldn't have done it myself without everybody else.
So you three have now been through the machine, right? You've been through this process, and it has been incredibly successful. So congratulations. For those who don't know, they won the Oscar this last year, which is unbelievable. Yeah, a round of applause. Unbelievable.
Thank you.
So now, having gone through that process almost a year ago now, what has changed? Like we're kind of through the COVID world, right? Is it changed the way that you approach collaboration? Changed the way you approach your job? Have you taken other jobs in different ways? Like, how has this changed things?
I'm gonna, so I would say like I do miss the indie world. I think what I miss the most about our little film is like what Carey said. It's the communication is so direct. Like, Aashish can speak more about this when it comes to VFX. Like one with Adobe also like, our edit was quite crazy. Like everyone know. I think we really pushed Premiere to its limit. So till the point it started broken down a little bit. Uh, I got. I think that was right before Kara was like, guys, we gotta do the test for the post workflow because we gotta start the VFX and the color and everything later on. So we were doing the test and it was just failing. Every single section was just failing, and I was just in this panic mode. I was like, Ashish, how are you gonna turn over VFX? Because and I was like, how am I gonna send this to Technicolor to tell them how to online? So, Paul was like, Zoe, let's just talk to Adobe. So Ashish and I were in touch with Marjorie the whole time, which, the support from Adobe is one thing I think every film, doesn't matter you're cut on Avid or you're on Premiere or you're on DaVinci Resolve, like having the software company behind you is so important because we were able to, there was like 1 week, I think 1 week, Ashish had to like intensely test out what we need because at that point the assembly was out, a lot of the crazy time remapping and everything was out there. So we were able to just test out all the things we needed and we sent a bunch, I think 23 bugs to Adobe. Marjorie was able to work on it and iron it out fairly quickly for us so that we can move forward. So that's one thing I really miss, which is having
That's
a
called
company
VIP service.
yeah, having a company behind us.
We'd have like montages where there's like 50 shots in, I don't know, 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And all of those nested. And the nest itself has like a resize on it,
Or
like keyframed.
Yeah.
And it's within another nest which has a stabilizing thing on it.
Yeah.
And like rotation and time remapping.
Yeah.
So when we would try to flatten stuff, Premiere would just be like, oh.
I don't know what. So the clips were just disappearing left to right.
Yeah.
So I was like,
There
oh
was
my
one
goodness.
time where we got on a Zoom, the three of us, and Ashish is here. It was like, I don't know what.
Yeah. And then we had the workflow for onlining with Technicolor, now Picture Shop. I think like after I tell them what we have, and then they were like quiet for a bit, and then they said, have you guys thought about like onlining yourself? And I was like, oh, thank God. Because I think at that point we have figured out, and we already told Carey, was like, okay, worst comes to worst, we can do this ourselves. Because we already know, we had an idea how we can online this. Because of VFX started so early, which really benefited us, we were able to figure out how we're gonna online also. So I remember having the conversation with Technicolor, and they were like, have you guys thought about do yourself? I was like, yes, I can do that myself.
Up until then, we had worked on indie stuff, like so many indie projects, and we had always done our own conform.
Yeah.
Instead of going through like a finishing house and
Yeah.
letting them pull the raw footage, we had the raw footage like with us
The
in our apartments.
Yeah. So
we were able to just relink.
exactly.
And where do you guys live now?
Yeah. So that was I think that's the other thing I miss about the indie thing is just how like I guess it looks bad on me because it looks like I'm a control freak, but I do check a lot, and I do like the idea that I have access to these things and I can check it all the time to make sure it is correct. Yeah, I guess,
Sometimes it's okay to be a control freak.
I guess.
In this instance, yes.
Especially when you're dealing with nested sequence. I mean, that's the innovation. That's what I was mentioning, right? Like that's unbelievable editing like approach, right? And so how does that even translate into an EDL? You know what I mean? It just doesn't work. you
Yeah.
know? So I can see how that process evolved. But Kylee, you want to-
Yeah, at Adobe, I mean, we love this stuff. I'm a problem solver at heart, and I love indie film. So this was really fascinating to just see all of this happen. And we still continue to engage with as many productions as we can to solve problems. I mean, sometimes I've heard, Adobe has to go support a movie to get it done, but this movie was very indie. It's not like we're like, oh, this is an Oscar winner. We have to help them. No, they were just awesome people. Marjorie had a great relationship that she built. And we learned a lot. All of us, we learned a lot and then enabled the team to be able to work in a way that was just a lot more interesting and accessible. So if anyone here edits in Premiere, hit me up on LinkedIn, email me. I am in the Premiere editors group on Facebook. I'm everywhere. And part of my job is to listen to customers like this film and all of your projects and learn from that, because the tool has to iterate. Premiere is over 30 years old. It's amazing that software works at all. Honestly, we should all just be like, this is just numbers, like what? It's magic. And so we need a lot of customer input to make sure that we're evolving in the way that workflows are needing to evolve. So it's just a fascinating experience to be in the weeds with productions like this and be able to problem solve alongside you. So thanks.
Zoe, there's something I want to jump back, because at near the end of the project, you started working on another project, right? That was potentially remote, or I think something in Taiwan or something. Is that right? Or
Yeah. I mean, I jumped off. Aashish took over for quite a while for me, and I worked on I cut a feature while everything was still going on. And then I jumped back because he has to leave. So just 2 of us are.
And the feature was in a different country, yeah?
Yeah, my director was in Taiwan. I was over here, so we were cutting on Evercast this whole time. Yeah.
So it kind of gave you flexibility as an example of being able to stay here and work,
Totally. It was she was in Taiwan. She was gonna shoot in Taiwan. She's my classmate. She's the same year with us at AFI. So I was asking her. She was originally planning to come out, but because we use Evercast now on everything ever. So I was like, oh, you don't have to come. Like, we can just use this. It's totally working. So that's what I did. So I was able to. I think that was when VFX was going on really heavy. So Aashish was taking over the whole thing. So I was having a little break because the cut was getting to a point. So I was able to jump off the project and then cut this feature with my director for about 3-4 months. And she was in Taiwan. Yeah.
So Carey, I want to jump back to our post producer as a fellow post producer myself. So how has this changed your perspective? Are dare I say, Daly's facility is going to die, or where is this all leading, and how would you change your philosophy?
It's interesting because with the strike and what's happening right now, and people talking about money and the bottom line and who's not getting what or who's getting too much, I think that workflows like that can benefit smaller productions and these tech companies that don't want to spend the tentpole money for these big blockbusters. I mean, we're all not going to get an Oppenheimer and a Barbie every 6 months. And if platform is the end-all place to be, then, studios are going to look for smaller overall budgets, I think. So I'm more inclined to go with the independent, talented group of people that can take it and bring back something that you're really going to like. It's just I don't know if the studio will feel willing enough to allow that freedom.
I agree. And I think that's what's been fun taking the transition from production into technology, is that making that facility possible. That's kind of the mission of Evercast, is bringing all of that stuff together and providing a place where the creativity can flow free and it can be unrestrictive, right? And so kind of moving forward, and I'll start with you, Kylee, about where do you think the future of this is going? Of course, you and I work in technology. We try to solve these crazy people's problems and then bring it to our customers, right? But where do you think this is all headed?
I mean, I think this film is a sign of what's to come, where it's people from the next generation of filmmaking who are used to just having a lot more access to all the creative aspects of their film that aren't locked into the same workflow that Hollywood has been using. Especially, the pandemic kind of made a lot of this move forward, make it more collaborative. People are editing wherever they want now. Virtual production, you don't even have to go anywhere. We can just be in one building all day, all the time. And so that then gives everyone this desire to have more experiences. So I think that we are kind of, through the pandemic and then through all this, finding our humanity a little bit more, which makes it very interesting with what else is going on. And of course, everyone get ready, take a shot. AI is here. And we're facing that now, and we can't ignore that. We're the only panel today, I think, where nobody said it until right now, so I had to break the pattern. But I mean, the reality is that is a thing right now, and it's sticking around. It's hit that point in the adoption where it's not really so much a toy anymore. At Adobe, we've had AI in our product for over 10 years, more from the automative way, machine learning, things like that. Now, generative AI is opening up a lot of experience, a lot of new opportunities. And I think that, you know, through all of this, people are rightfully afraid of what that means, how it will impact the industry, new jobs, things like that. But I will say that it's democratizing things, like you've heard on every panel today. And without the democratization of video editing in the early 2000s, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be on the stage. And just think about what that means in terms of generative AI and AI in general. Access, people that didn't have the skill or access to build the skills now can tell their stories in different ways. What does that unlock for creativity for humanity now? That's really interesting to me. So, of course, with AI at Adobe, we're very creator-centric. We have we've been spearheading the Content Authenticity Initiative that strives to create standards around provenance and ownership and things like that. But it's a very interesting time, and I'm excited to see, you know, what this team does next, what Paul Rogers does next, and how the next film will push Premiere to and After Effects to their limits, because that's really what makes the product really that much better. We had that also with a film called Searching. It was almost basically every shot in the film was a VFX shot in After Effects, and they had to be able to zoom in because it was like the UI of your computer. So everything had to be like massively huge to zoom into it properly, and that would break things very quickly, but that made the product better. So yeah, I think the future of our industry is really just led in relationships and understanding each other that much better and ourselves better too.
Yeah, it's a question I want to pose too to our lovely creative team. So this sort of impending, and now Kylie's put it out there, right? The evils of the AI or other tools that are out there. Is that something you're excited about, worried about? Is it another tool in the bucket to learn that you can utilize, or does it have ramifications? What are your thoughts?
I think it could be helpful for them in their jobs, but I also think that it's an opportunity for the financiers to find ways to reduce the manpower if that stuff's helping. So it could be a bittersweet kind of thing. I think obviously anything creative that comes out of it that makes our lives better is great, but you know, we don't want one person to have to do the job of 7, right? That would be mine.
Well, I think it could help. I think it helps. It probably would help the assistant editing side for some of those really time-consuming things. For example, syncing sound and organizing and stuff like that. But I still feel like I still trust human brain more than AI. So I still think a lot of the things should come from us. You know, and I can imagine me and Aashish, even if AI syncs the sound for us, we're probably still gonna go in to check did they sync it right or not.
Yeah, and we had to improvise like so much on this show that yeah, I don't think AI could have. I don't think AI would have been super helpful in that regard.
Yeah, I think that's our perspective too. We're watching AI closely at Evercast too, and how to make it useful, right? And how to use it as a tool. To me, it's another tool in the chest. But I think how you use that tool and wield it is going to be the important question. But thank you so much for your time. I think we're going to open it up to some questions. Does anyone have any questions in the audience? Yeah. Go ahead.
So obviously hindsight's 2020. Let's get the microphone. So after a project like that, obviously you've learned a lot about the workflow and everything, but I'm curious to know, I mean, it's interesting that you did it in productions, but it's almost like a team style workflow, how you were like updating from like remote locations, you know, off and syncing all the hard drives. But what would be you guys' like changes that you would make to the workflow now that you're finished, or like any modifications that you would make to improve it looking back?
Lucid Link. Yeah, we didn't have. I mean, we weren't using Lucid Link at the time, so yeah, I think having a sort of central place where we could store our productions and then sync it to everyone, that would have. Yeah, I think Lucid Link is very tailored to Premiere as well, so yeah, that would have been much more helpful.
Is Lucid Link like a Nexus server or like that
Yeah,
platform?
it's sort of like
Okay. All right.
storage.
Yeah.
It's like, for those that don't know, it's like a virtual hard drive in the cloud, essentially, that you can link directly into a project file in Premiere or any application, and then it will pull down frames as needed. So it's a little bit less sync everything with Resilio, right, as an example. So
The big houses charge a lot of money for that. So I will check out Lucid.
all right, next question, anyone? Got one over here?
This might actually be a naive question, but I'm just thinking about the DIT and how much work that he had to do. And is this during production? Is your DIT going into overtime every single day? What are the cost implications of one person taking on all that ingest and getting the shuttle over to you guys at the end of the day during daily ingesting?
Matt didn't have any problems. It was like secondhand to him. So maybe he was a unicorn. I don't know. But he had it all worked out, had other options that he'd done on other projects. So he wasn't there late. I think maybe the first couple of weeks we were getting our groove on. But after that, no. I mean, we didn't have any.
Yeah, I mean, Matt was ingesting cards on set and backing up and then transcoding to proxies, and that was it. And then it would hand it over to us. We're the one who we sync the sound and created dailies. So I guess in that case, Matt didn't have to spend too much time on syncing so that he can get the proxy to me fairly quick.
I'll jump on this one as too, and I'm going to take my moderator hat off here in a second. But it's really about, a role of a DIT and other roles on set, because I used to be a line, is very well defined, right? Especially from a union perspective. But those roles change, right? And technology changes that role, and that's an opportunity. It'd be foolish to look at that as a problem. Like, it's an opportunity for that work, that time that was spent doing that process, to now put it in a different place. So as an example, synchronizing and making sure footage is secure is very, very important, right? But the DIT's role has now changed into color correction, live grading, this type of stuff. And the next iteration is now you're gonna have a camera to cloud built into camera or built into a device that will automate dailies into the thing and synchronize that process. And a lot of the work shouldn't be trying to go through a conform. In your cases, maybe it will, because there's like, 8 nested sequencers or something, but that work should just be taken care of, right? The real hard work is the creative, the putting the things together, the assembly, organizing things in certain ways, and you use AI in that focus as well. So I think you have to go to places like this and learn from incredible individuals like this about how they've changed their role and how it's evolving, and that will inform the future. All right, well, thank you so much for being here. So give these guys another round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.